All right, well, offensive title or not, today we start a new series where I tell you the things that I wish somebody had told me when I started my business. This is why you suck. So let's go over how to set your shop rate. It's one of the biggest things that somebody starting out is going to struggle with, and it is a hard question to answer. When I started out, my shop rate was $20 an hour, and that's bullshit. Today, it's $90, and it's about to go up. I'll tell you how I made that transition in the 6 years I've been at this. When I started out, I had that little lunchbox welder that was picked up at an auction, and all my other tools, grinders, magnets, fit in a toolbox this size. So don't think that just because you're starting out small doesn't mean you can't get there pretty quick. So what does your shop rate actually mean? It means, what is the value of your time and the time or fraction of the life of all of the tools that you're going to use. Your shop rate also reflects learning, experience, mistakes, previous purchases, things you've done in the past to make you better now. You're not just being paid for what you're doing today, you're being paid for what you did last week, a year ago, 5 years ago. It's also a reflection of the tools you've bought and the time you've put in. If you look out there, you'll see it's just barely dusk. It is 6:10 a.m. right now, and I've been at the shop for over an hour. That is why I earn what I do. Then again, I'm also here because it's gonna be 110 degrees today, and I wanna get an early start so I can take a break at lunch. If y'all have been following along for a while, you've probably noticed I don't really care what your opinion is or what anybody else's is. I'm a pretty diehard libertarian. I want to be left alone, I want to live my life, and I want the market to solve as many problems as it can. That's what your shop rate is. It's the market rate for your labor. Your shop rate should reflect two things. One, how busy you are, and two, how tooled up you are. If you purchase a new tool that lets you do your job 50% faster, the customer does not reap the economic benefit of that. Their benefit is in you being able to turn a job around faster or do one that you weren't able to do previously. You look at all these tools, these are not tools. These are physical manifestations of time I spent in the past trading my labor for money so I could trade my money for the tools. This is an investment, and you reap the reward for that, at least on the economic side. Likewise, supplies you keep on hand. Again, that's money that I traded my labor for so that I could have these on hand so when a customer walks in, I can turn a job around as fast as possible. That ability to turn things around quickly affects my shop rate. On top of tools and supplies, things like demonstrations to show customers what you do, material you're holding in on hand, again, so you can turn things quickly. Those are value adds. And when you add a value add, that means your shop rate should increase. So do me a favor, y'all. If you're liking what I'm doing here, hit that like button, tell YouTube to let other people know about it too, and why not go ahead and subscribe? So I mentioned I'm a market forces guy. Shop rate is a reflection of supply and demand. There are approximately 2,000 working hours in a year. You're gonna be billable for anywhere from half to 2/3 of those generally. If you do a lot of contract repetitive work, you'll be billable more. If you do a lot of one-offs, you'll be billable less. That's just the way it is. Now, whenever possible, I try not to work by the hour. I'd much rather bid a job. When you're working by the hour, you've got to justify every minute of that hour, especially at $90 an hour. A minute means $1.50. It adds up pretty quick. You're gonna have customers who aren't happy that you took a break, don't want to pay your drive time, don't like that they're paying for you to go get steel for their project specifically. Well, if it can't wait for my next or 2-day delivery from my steel yard, I've got to go get it. Sorry, that's time I could have been in the shop working on something else. It's billable. If you're working by the project, you need to factor all that in your head before you come out with a quote. And then after you've done the job, you need to evaluate whether or not your quote is good and you did it right, And if not, in future, maybe add a little bit more time to the quote. Now bidding, that's a whole different can of worms, and I'll probably do a follow-up video on that. But in the meantime, if you want some help with your bids, I invite you to join these badass folks up here who are supporting the channel on Patreon. You get access to a bid breakdown on every project I do where I go over the real numbers. And at some of the higher tiers, you're gonna get the ability to reach out to me, send me a picture of what you're working on, your design, and I'll tell you exactly what I would quote. That simple, so you're not leaving money on the table. Now, as your time is the supply, as the market, your customers, demand your time, the value of your time increases. You should start out at whatever sort of shop rate makes sense for you in your area. I started at 26 years ago. 30 is probably a good place to start nowadays. And then very quickly, every month, 2 months, 3 months, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. If you're busy, your rate needs to increase. My metric for that is, once I get so busy that I'm having to turn down work, generally means my rate should increase. You don't want to turn away a customer. You want a customer to turn themselves away because your rate is right where it needs to be, that good customers will pay for it, and those who either are cheap or legitimately can't afford your rate will not. And as long as that mark sits where you're working 35 to 40 hours a week, you're hitting it on the nose. Now, 35 to 40 hours a week is a great target. You're gonna have weeks where it's slow and maybe you only work 30 and you're only billable for 2/3 of that. You're gonna have weeks where you're stupid busy and you work 100. You wanna see a video? Check the card out right here about how I did, oh man, about 4 weeks worth of work in 12 days. But Richard, why would you only be billable half to 2/3 of the time? Well, you're not billable for the time you spend on a project that doesn't go forward, quotes that never materialize, cleaning the shop, driving to get new tools, any of the other time that you spend on your business, doing your taxes, accounting, none of that's billable. That time still needs to be factored in though, because otherwise now all your evenings are gone, like mine are for video editing, because after you get home from a long day, you've got to do all that stuff too. Perfect example, drop down extension cord, $45. That's half an hour of my time right now. I didn't get to take that home. It's an asset. So I mentioned that there's a couple times your shop rate should go up. One, of course, when your demand for your time outstrips the limited and finite supply you have. You can run yourself ragged working 100 hours a week, but you can't do it for very long, at least not sustainably with the high level of quality you want to put out. The second time that your shop rate should go up, even if you're not as busy as you could be, is when you give a customer a price and everybody accepts it. If people are not saying no to your price isn't high enough. Because in the grand scheme of things, you're gonna have customers all the way over here who are cheap and just don't want to pay for anything. You're gonna have customers who just can't afford something. And you're gonna have customers down this end who understand the value of labor. Those are probably also business owners. You want to be somewhere in here where the people that value your time, you're picking up that work. You're picking up a lot of the work in the middle. The people who can't afford your rate, maybe you help them out sometimes, but you can't build a business off that. And the people who are cheap, ignore them entirely because they will nickel and dime you on everything. Again, right in the middle. If everybody accepts your rate or your bid or your quote the first time you give it, you're not charging enough. So let's recap a little bit. 2 things define your shop rate. How busy you are, how many people turn you down. If you're not getting turned down by some people, you're not charging enough. If you're too busy for you to be comfortable, you're not charging enough. That's all there is to it. Up your rate. I started out $20 an hour pretty quick. I was at 25, 30, 35, and I sat there for quite a while. There was some mental block in my head about going to $40 an hour for some reason, but I got over it. I went to 40, 50, 60, 75, then 90, about 9 months ago. And you know what, to be honest, I'm getting pretty close to going to 100. That's another mental block. I don't really want to do it, but I'm busy. And that means that people are paying for that time and they're putting that much value on what I'm doing. So before you think I'm greedy and people like me are greedy, you got to realize that your shop rate, you're only getting paid when you're billable, and all your costs come out of it. $90 an hour. Taxes are about 20-ish dollars of that. You're gonna have rent, bills, vehicle costs, maintenance on your tools, new tools, website costs. Man, what else? Funding for experiments you do, training, further education. All of that comes out of that. It's gonna make up, in my case, about another $20 of it. And when you're bringing on hired help, depending on how you're doing your billing, some of the cost of that may come out of your shop rate, though it shouldn't. When I have Tommy on and we're working by the hour, Tommy's rate is added on to my shop rate. All these numbers are gonna be specific to your area as well. I'm sure there's other videos out there about other people telling you how they come up with their shop rate, and everybody's gonna say the same thing. If you live in the middle of nowhere, your market probably can't hold up to 90 bucks an hour, but your cost of living is also probably much lower. Oklahoma City's pretty mid-range. An affordable starter house that's nice is high 100,000s. So that gives you some reference to wherever you are. I think our medium income is in the mid 40,000s. But a really good way to get a grasp on what your market is gonna bear for your skills is to call up auto body shops or mechanics. Ask them what their hourly labor rate is. They're gonna be around about where you should be, to be honest, once you're fully tooled up, skilled up, and you've built a name for yourself. Speaking of which, I had my Jeep in the shop for a rear end replacement just down the street from me. Their rate was $96 an hour. Right on par. Your time's not worth any less than a mechanic's. They have a lot of tools, you have a lot of tools. They have some training or experience, you have some training or experience. You're both working physically demanding jobs, generally out in the elements. It's gonna be over 100 degrees inside the shop today. They're no different than you. Why should they get paid more? Now, the thing I haven't touched on in as much depth is, what do you do when you're getting started? In this business, you don't have a college degree that says, I'm a good metal fabber. You don't have anything coming in front of you except for your reputation, pictures of your work, and references from past customers. If you haven't built stuff, you don't have pictures. If you haven't done work for people, you don't have past customers. And if your work isn't out there showing itself off, you don't have a name to stand on. It's gonna take you a little while to get started. It's disheartening. It's part of the business. There's a reason people say you gotta pay your dues. These are your dues. The faster you do more good work for more people and the right customers, the faster you'll get your name out there, the faster you kind of get out of business puberty. So if you guys want some future episodes of Why You Suck and get some more shop advice from somebody like me who's been through it, hit subscribe. Like I mentioned before, if you want to get some of that in-depth, real numbers information on Patreon, that'll be right there. I'm gonna have 2 videos right here, YouTube things you might like, and I thank y'all for stopping by. Until next time, don't suck.